So last week, if you remember, prior to our actual reading, we went back a little bit to Devahuti's questions to Lord Kapila-Dev. And she asked that you please speak about the difficulties of the cycles of birth and death, because by hearing such information and difficulties and reality, will become detached from material affinity in this material world. So as anyone who's studied these course materials can see, Lord Kapila-Dev is going quite into depth about the sufferings and difficulties of birth, death, reaction to fruitive activities and karma. So there's been some really nice forum entries that people understood connecting this with those two mechanical mechanisms of material nature. Prakshipatmika means pushing. I always remember the Prakshipatmika because it begins with P. The living entities in this material world get pushed, forced into a particular circumstance. It's a suffering circumstance, practically no matter who or where they are. But then Avaranatmika is the covering energy, which allows and conditions the living entity to adapt to that circumstance that it's been forced and pushed into, and to try and find pleasure in that circumstance. So I think it was Chatamayi wrote a nice forum post about her giving birth to 3 children and the different counselors and people that help you train and get ready to give birth, how they were talking about how the baby has to be comfortable and a nice quiet atmosphere. And certainly the atmosphere should be improved as much as possible by the mother. But to really make it a nice place is not possible as described by Lord Kapila-Dev. So similarly, our attempts, wherever we are, whenever we're there, we always try to find some way to find pleasure, happiness, and enjoyment. But in this material world, whatever we find is temporary, full of ignorance and difficulties. So let us read more about the prayers from the baby in the womb, and a little bit more about what happens to the baby once it comes out of the womb and starts to live through babyhood, youth, and adolescence to adulthood. Just a second here. Okay, we are in April still. Lessons 7 and 8. Chapter 31, Lord Kapila's instructions on the movements of the living entities. Samapriya, you want to pick some readers?
Yes. Hare Krishna, everyone. Nice to see you here. Tisha, I see your beautiful smile. Would you like to start today and read for us?
Yes. Hi, everybody. Hare Krishna.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Okay, the picture is a prayer from a womb. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-15. The human soul further prays. The living entity is put under the influence of material nature and continues a hard struggle for existence on the path of repeated birth and death. Excuse me. This conditional life is due to his forgetfulness of his relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, without the Lord's mercy, how can he again engage in the transcendental loving service of the Lord? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Here it is said, one is liberated not by knowledge, but by the mercy of the Supreme Lord. The knowledge the conditioned soul gains by mental speculation, however powerful it may be, is always too imperfect to approach the absolute truth. It is said that without the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot understand him or his actual form, quality, and name. One can be liberated in the knowledge of the absolute truth simply by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is clearly said herein that our memory is lost because we are now covered by his material energy. Arguments may be put forward as to why we have been put under the influence of this material energy by the supreme will of the Lord. This is explained in Bhagavad Gita, where the Lord says, I am sitting in everyone's heart, and due to me, one is forgetful or one is alive in knowledge. The forgetfulness of the conditioned soul is also due to the direction of the Supreme Lord. A living entity misuses his little independence when he wants to lord it over material nature. This misuse of independence, which is called Maya, is always available. Otherwise, there would be no independence. Independence implies that one can use it properly or improperly. It is not static, it is dynamic. Therefore, misuse of independence is the cause of being influenced by Maya.
Oh, okay. That's
Ooh.
quite. So what do you think about that, Tisha?
That's loaded. That's loaded.
It's loaded. So what's your realization on that verse?
Just that no matter how you strive for knowledge, you're not going to understand without the mercy of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. You're just not going to understand the absolute truth. There has to be, even though that word surrender isn't, I don't think is used in that purport at all. It does make you understand that if you don't, to get mercy of the Supreme Lord, there has to be some using your knowledge correct, your independence correctly, and surrendering.
Right. So how do you get the mercy of the Lord?
Serving the Lord, surrender.
Good. Very good. Patti, do you have something that was very explicit? Do you have something to add to that?
No, serving the Lord, and also he emphasizes serving his devotees. Serving devotees of the Lord is super powerful.
Yeah, serving the spiritual master, the topmost devotee. Okay, thank you, Tisha. Let's go on now with the next slide. Kate, would you like to read, Kate? Kate, my darling. Okay, we'll call on Kate after. Let's see. Shyam Govinda, why don't you read?
Okay. Hi, Krishna dear devotees. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-16. No one other than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as the localized Paramatma, the partial representation of the Lord, is directing all inanimate and animate objects. He is present in the three phases of time, past, present, and future. Therefore, the conditioned soul is engaged in different activities by his direction. And in order to get free from the threefold miseries of this conditional life, we have to just surrender unto him only. Purport. When a conditioned soul is seriously anxious to get out of the influence of the material clutches, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated within him as Paramatma, gives him the knowledge. Surrender unto me, as the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita. Give up all other engagements. Just surrender unto me. It is to be accepted that the source of knowledge is the Supreme Person. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Mata smritir ganam apahanam cha. There is no possibility of one's being situated in his own position unless he is blessed by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Unless he is enlightened with the supreme knowledge, one has to undergo the severe penalties of the hard struggle for existence in the material nature. The spiritual master is therefore the mercy manifestation of the Supreme Person. The conditioned soul has to take direct instruction from the spiritual master, and thus he gradually becomes enlightened to the path of Krishna consciousness. The seed of Krishna consciousness is sown within the heart of the conditioned soul, and when one hears instruction from the spiritual master, the seed fructifies and one's life is blessed.
Wonderful. And do you know what that's called? The last section, John? When this-
The Bhakti Lata Bij.
Yes, very good. Very good. What else do you have to say about this verse? This is confirming what Tisha said about surrender.
Yeah, surrender. And the segue from the previous verse mentioned that devotional service, or like choosing the Lord, is not static, it's dynamic. So in other words, like we have our free will, and each moment we can choose Krishna or choose Maya. And so the spiritual master is that person who helps us to keep choosing Krishna, and that's also coming from the Paramatma in the heart. But so basically, the spiritual master works from without, and the Paramatma works from within, and those two things working together under the guidance of the spiritual master helps us to exponentially think more of Krishna. That's what kind of came to me. So in other words, it's not static, it's dynamic, and there's a process for making it more dynamic. And
Right. It wouldn't be very interesting if it was static, right? It's a very dynamic process, especially the surrendering part, right? Not so easy sometimes to surrender. It's very dynamic. Anyone else? Pati, did you want to say something to this verse?
No, both of them seem to be saying,
Yeah.
I think I've mentioned it before. Someone put together a compilation of all the verses that Srila Prabhupada quoted from different scriptures throughout his lectures and his books and everything, because with computers, it's pretty easy to do that. And the number one verse that was quoted by Srila Prabhupada throughout all the years that he preached was Sarva Dhamman Parityaja Mamekam Saranam Braja, surrender unto me. So similarly, he's emphasizing that without the help of the Supreme Lord, no one can get out of this material world. Impossible.
Yeah. And how do we understand what that means to surrender?
You're asking me, or are you
Yeah.
asking the group? Through the
Okay,
spiritual master.
anyone.
Through
How
Lord
do you-
Kapila Dev's instructions, through Krishna's instructions, by the spiritual master. The whole parampara. That's what they're bringing is details, so many different aspects to what that surrender means. It's not just one time put up your hands and say, like before I became a devotee, I was searching, traveling around, going to different places, found this group of Christians, and their idea was if you simply ask Jesus into your heart and say, my dear Lord Jesus, please enter my heart, take over my life, I now surrender unto you. Then from then on, you're freed from all your past sins and everything in your life will be wonderful. And it didn't take long for that to not really be true. I was suffering again within a very short time. And there was not real knowledge of the surrendering process. We have Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, the 5 different most important activities to perform, the 9 forms of devotional service, what to eat, how to sleep, how to eat, how to dress, how to see the deity, how to dress the form of the deity, how to do artik, so many different aspects of that surrendering process, Sambandha, Avideya, and Prayojana.
Yeah, we could spend all day long reading all these Vedic literatures, all Srila Prabhupada's books and the books of the Goswamis to learn how to surrender. Thank you. Okay, let's go on. Bhadra, are you there? Bhadra?
Hare Krishna, yes. Danvat, all glory Srila Prabhupada.
So
Srimad
please.
Bhagavatam 3:31, 17 and 18. Fallen into a pool of blood. Oh my gosh, I have to read this. Into a
Yes.
blood, stool and urine within the abdomen of his mother. His own body scorched by the mother's gastric fire. The embodied soul, anxious to get out, counts his mothers and pray, "Oh my Lord, when shall I, a wretched soul, be released from his confinement? My dear Lord, by your causeless mercy, I am awakened to consciousness, although I am only 10 months old. For this causeless mercy of the Supreme Person of God and the friend of all fallen souls, there is no way to express my gratitude but to pray with folded hands. Purport. On one side of where the child is floating in the heat of gastric fire, on the other side are urine, stool, blood, and discharges. After 7 months, the child who has regained his consciousness feels the horrible condition of his existence and prays to the Lord. Counting the months until his release, he becomes greatly anxious to get out of their confinement. The Lord is always seeking the opportunity to reclaim the fallen souls to his abode, the kingdom of God. We should always feel very much obliged to the Supreme Person of Godhead, for he is always anxious to bring us into the happy condition of eternal life. There is no sufficient means to repay the personality of Godhead for his act of benediction. Therefore, we can simply feel gratitude and pray to the Lord with folded hands. This prayer of the child in the womb may be questioned by some atheistic people. How can a child pray in such a nice way in the womb of his mother? Everything is possible by the grace of the Lord. The child is put into such a precarious condition externally, but internally he is the same, and the Lord is there. By the transcendent energy of the Lord, everything is possible.
Okay, Vajra, what's your realization of this? You made a very graphic statement in the beginning. So,
Well, realization is that I mean, yeah, we pray this. If the soul is very pious, he will pray in the womb. It is like when you go in the elevator and there are 10 people, in the small elevator, 10 people are there instead of the capacity of the is 7 or 8, but 10 people are there. You waiting, get out. When my floor is going to get out of the material world. So here the situation is worst in the womb, but unfortunately, as soon as we come out, we read more. As soon as we come out, that's it. We forget our prayers, and we don't want to surrender anymore. That's it. That prayer gone in there somewhere on the shelf.
actually, that's not a conscious. It's not a conscious decision. The soul is totally covered up because of the pain and the trauma of birth.
Yes.
So it's a very precarious situation. We're very fortunate.
Good point Srila Prabhupada is making is that in the purport is that the atheistic thinks that how is that possible that the child can pray, but Srila Prabhupada is making an important point that externally might be outside condition might be precarious, but internally the soul is not affected by the external condition. If he stands, on the transcendental, he is always the transcendental energy of the Lord. Everything is possible. So that is for the pious soul. That is possible. Right. And same as we can also say that the pure devotee, when he's living his body, externally he might be suffering so much, but internally he's he's so situated on transcendental platform that he is not affected by external conditions, and he's always praying to his conscience is always to pray to the Lord, just like Srila Prabhupada.
Right.
Nice example. Thank you.
Very good. Premananda also wrote something very wonderful, an analysis of his own life and compared to the child in the womb, right? It is, how he felt completely confined. Actually, Krishna gives us these realizations throughout our lives, this confinement, how we're confined by material energy. And that's our duty as in this human form of life to find the absolute truth. Do we have time for Premananda to just react to that, Ati? Or we'll just go on?
Sure. I don't know how you connected what he wrote to this.
Well, we're talking about the baby in the womb and the confinement.
So he was talking about what?
He was talking about in his wonderful childhood. It was all, you say it, Premananda.
Oh, okay. Hare Krishna. Well, I was saying that my childhood was wonderful nice place, beautiful family, nice environment. But at that time, we didn't appreciate how blissful and almost perfect that life was. But there was this desire to lord it over material nature. Like similarly, I wanted to explore the outside world, travel, see. So gradually, that I think that was the pull of Maya. That was I was saying that Maya gradually dragged me away from that ideal environment to this world where I got subject to the different miseries. Even though at first it looks nice in a big city, nice place, good friends, nice office, bars, restaurants, but gradually I felt how miserable I was. And the situation didn't change. I was in Mumbai and then I came to US. The same trend continues. So basically, what I was trying to say is that so this cycle continued, right? Life after life. We always tried to find material happiness somewhere, but we just got deeper and deeper into this whirlpool, right? So what I was trying to reflect is that we were in an ideal place, perfect place with Krishna, but we didn't like it. We left everything behind to enjoy here, and then we got stuck here. So that's what I was trying to say from my post.
Nice.
So that's why the prayer is, okay, my Lord, now deliver me. I suffered enough. I know the mistake I've made, so take me back
Well,
home.
as we go on, we'll hear Bhakti Vinod's words on
Right.
that subject matter.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go on now with Kate. Do you want to read now, Kate?
Yes, Hare Krishna, everyone. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-19. The living entity in another type of body sees only by instinct. He knows only the agreeable and disagreeable sense perceptions of that particular body. But I have a body in which I can control my senses and can understand my destination. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisances to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by whom I have been blessed with this body, and by whose grace I can see him within and without. Purport. The fortunate child in the womb of his mother realizes his superior position and is thereby distinguished from other bodies. Animals in bodies lower than that of the human being are conscious only as far as their bodily distress and happiness are concerned. They cannot think of more than their bodily necessities of life, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But in the human form of life, by the grace of God, the consciousness is so developed that a man can evacuate his exceptional position and thus realize the self and the Supreme Lord. The word Dhamma Shariri means that we have a body in which we can control the senses and the mind. The complication of materialistic life is due to uncontrolled mind and uncontrolled senses. One should feel grateful to the Supreme Personality of Godhead for having obtained such a nice human form of body, and one should properly utilize it. The distinction between an animal and a man is that an animal cannot control himself and has no sense of decency, whereas a human being has a sense of decency and can control himself. If this controlling power is not exhibited by the human being, then he is no better than an animal. By controlling the senses or by the process of yoga regulation, one can understand the position of his self, the supersoul, the world, and their interrelation. Everything is possible by controlling the senses. Otherwise, we are no better than animals.
Wow. This sentence, if this controlling power is not exhibited by the human being, then he is no better than an animal. That means the mind and the body, the senses, the mind and the senses. What do you think about that, Kate?
I think that within this prayer, in this part, there's a lot of gratitude. This was my understanding. It's like, thank you, Krishna, for giving me this ability to actually elevate myself beyond animal life and to realize the presence of the super soul and to be able to act through the super soul and, use my intelligence in a proper way.
Good. Did you want to go back to the words, Patti, for a moment? Is there anything else that you can, it's interesting that I was thinking, and my husband mentioned, we discussed this morning, how not everyone can pray in the womb, just as Bhadra mentioned. It's not that everyone can feel this kind of gratitude. One has to actually have evolved from many births to come to the point of that kind of piety where he can pray in the womb. All right, then. Is there anything else that has been mentioned here? Patsy, did you see something? Oh, Kate, did you want to see something else, Angel?
Oh, nothing much. Just, we see this animalistic behavior in humans when we go to, like, what we were in St. Augustine last week, and just seeing the activities of, when we're in these places, there's so many people, and what are they doing? They're just running around like animals, just, gratifying their senses. So it's really, actually, I feel a lot of gratitude for this reminder.
Good for you. Also, I question this sometimes myself. For a devotee, when you've been practicing for some time, we know the regulated principles. We can control the senses to some extent. We have prasadam. We offer our food, but the mind is the thing. The mind, to control the mind is, it's not an easy thing. What did Krishna say about controlling the mind? Anyone? No one knows.
People more difficult to control than the wind.
Right. So that is very difficult. So how do we control the mind? Okay, the quick, easy lesson to keep it in your mind. How do you control the greatest enemy?
Get a steak in the morning and beat it with a steak.
Okay, so what's the stick? What is the stick?
Better to get up early, chant Hare Krishna and go to.
Okay, there you go.
Japa.
Japa, Shravanam Kirtanam. That's the stick. By hearing, we put something else in our mind, right? So that's the stick. Very good.
Krishna says by constant practice and detachment.
Oh,
That's the answer that he gave to Arjuna. He said, yes, indeed, it is difficult to control the mind, but it is possible by constant practice and determination.
Thank you.
What's the shoe?
what's the shoe? Well,
Hare Krishna
Shravanam Kirtanam.
Mahamantra, yes.
Yeah. So,
When I first joined Krishna consciousness, I thought it was a bit harsh that the philosophy was that if you're not acting like a human, then you're actually an animal. But then there was a real nice article in a Back to Godhead magazine. And what they did was they showed like a mural on one page. It was a full page image. And it was all the same image, but many, many versions of it, one on top of the other, of a body with a suit and a tie, but it had the head of a dog. So I could understand that this person is actually dressed up like a human being and in the body of a human being, but the actions he was performing was actually dog-like or animalistic, eating, sleeping, mating, and defending without any restriction or regulation, or just if it feels good, do it, was a big part of my generation.
and what's that other verse about Krishna consciousness? Poison in the nectar in the beginning. That's what it is. It feels good, do it. So it's nectar in the beginning, but it's poison in the end. Whereas Krishna consciousness, it's a little bit intense, poison in the beginning, but nectar eternally. So that's good. Okay, let's go on. And Manvantara, would you like to read, my darling? Manvantara? We're still hearing the baby in the womb.
Text 20. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Deva Maya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of continual birth and death, begins. Purport. By the influence of Maya, the external energy, one forgets everything just after birth. Therefore, the child, my screen is a little, I can't see the full thing here.
Yeah.
So I'm missing some words here based on how my thing is. I don't understand it. But therefore, the child praying, I'm missing some words.
Okay, so you want to Should we have someone else read for this one and you? try to-
Yeah, because I can't see the, I don't
Okay.
understand how to manipulate the screen in such a way that I can see the full. Sorry.
Technical difficulty. Okay, sweetie. Arundhati, would you like to continue?
Hare Krishna. Sorry about
Hey,
that.
Arundhati.
I'm on listening mode today. I won't be able to read. Sorry about that.
Okay, sweetie. Okay, good. Okay, Nanda won't read. Madhurya, would you like to read? Victoria. Come on, everyone's
I'll
experiencing.
take,
Sure,
okay.
sorry. It's hard to unmute it.
Okay,
Okay, so this is Haribol, everybody.
What-
Srimad Bhagavatam.
good.
Pardon?
Yeah, read the whole thing again.
Read the whole thing. Okay.
Yeah.
3.31.20. Therefore, my Lord, although I am living in a terrible condition, I do not wish to depart from my mother's abdomen to fall again into the blind well of materialistic life. Your external energy, called Devamaya, at once captures the newly born child, and immediately false identification, which is the beginning of the cycle of the cycle of continual birth and death begins. Prabhupada's purport. By the influence of Maya, the external energy, one forgets everything just after birth. Therefore, the child is praying that he prefers to remain within the womb rather than come out. It is said that Sukadeva Goswami, on this consideration, remained for 16 years within the womb of his mother. He did not want to be entangled in false bodily identification. After cultivating such knowledge within the womb of his mother, he came out at the end of the 16 years and immediately left home so that he might not be captured by the influence of Maya. The influence of Maya is also explained in Bhagavad Gita as insurmountable. But insurmountable Maya can be overcome simply by Krishna consciousness. That is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 7:14. Mameva yapapadyante mayam etam taranti te. Whoever surrenders unto the lotus feet of Krishna can get out of this false conception of life.
Insurmountable Maya. Okay. What's your realization of this, Madhurya ji?
Well, like it says in the last sentence there, anyone who surrenders unto the lotus feet and performs devotional service can get out of this, because Maya is so strong. Even Prabhupada used to pray that he's pure devotee, but he would pray, that he not be come under the influence of Maya. That was just for us, as an example. So he said, we're not afraid enough of Maya. That's the disease of the Western world.
Right. You're not afraid enough of Maya, because we were talking before about the mind and the senses. How can you relate those two with being afraid of Maya?
With what?
With the mind and the senses. Sometimes when we are practicing and we're withholding the senses, but our minds are disturbed. Oh, there's Vajra, but one moment, Vajra. Go on. Madhurya, can you speak about that?
If our mind is disturbed because of what we're doing with our senses, is that what you mean?
No, our mind is disturbed. Basically, it's a very difficult thing to control the mind, right? So, and I think it's sometimes harder to control than the senses. For a devotee practice, it's like very automatic.
Well, it requires regulation and reading and chanting and associating.
Good.
And that's the only way to really do it.
Right. Hearing, Shravanam Kirtanam. All the 5 most important things in devotional service: hearing the Bhagavatam, chanting Hare Krishna, worshiping the deity, living in the holy dham or a place where Krishna consciousness is practiced. But
you could do all this artificially too. I mean, superficially, that's what I meant. Superficially, right? And if your mind's somewhere else, it still is difficult. Yeah.
Well, Krishna will help you.
Yeah, Krishna will help.
Yeah, we have
better
to
than not doing it.
Well, we have to be. You're right. It could be like an automatic thing. We're on automatic. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Okay, finish 16 rounds. Now You know, this is something that's supposed to change the heart. This Krishna consciousness, it changes the heart through Shravanam Kirtanam, engaging in devotional service. This is the process. And if we don't feel a change of heart, which means wanting to live our lives in a Krishna conscious way, then we have to question, you know, what it is that we're doing or not doing. It's a process.
One
Go on,
point that
Pratik.
comes to mind as we're come across this is, as we were expressing in the beginning, understanding how much we're suffering causes one to be more urgent, to change the situation, to do something to try and relieve the difficulty. So here we see a self-realized soul, Sukadeva Goswami, choosing to remain in the womb for fear or or apprehension of what will happen when he comes out into the material world and is exposed to all the different things that we find attractive, alluring. Rather than do that, him, understanding the urgency of spiritual life, preferred not to be exposed. So, especially in Kali Yuga, with so many easy things at our fingertips, I think we lose sight of the urgency quite often.
Wonderful. So much for the skyscraper buildings and all the advancement of mankind. The greatest self-realized soul didn't want to go out of the womb because it was dangerous. He didn't want to get involved. Vajra.
Thank you, Dhruv Maharaj Prabhu, because as soon as I read the translation, I thought of Sukadeva Goswami, and you explained nicely. But the question is that Sukadeva Goswami was, even though he was for worshiping the Lord, praying to the Lord within the womb, as I understand, if I'm wrong, please correct me, but he was impersonalist. So how is that he was praying to the Lord?
He was hearing his father speak the Bhagavatam.
But that is after, isn't
No, in the womb he was hearing, right? Patsy?
it? Was?
He was hearing the Bhagavatam in the womb.
Is it? Because I thought he was going out and his father had to, these two famous verses, his disciple, his father's disciple, and they had to recite those two verses, important verses, and then he returned back to his father, and his father told whole Srimad Bhagavatam.
What was that? What are the two verses?
That is, one is about the Krishna is wearing the Vajantimala garland, and from the third canto, is actually in the 10th canto, but it's a third canto is mentioned, that sloka by Srila Prabhupada. And there is another verse is about the Putana, that how Krishna is so kind that Putana, I can't
About
quote the English, but I cannot quote this. I am not able to quote the Sanskrit, but in English it said that how the Krishna is so kind that Putana, even though she was trying to kill, she gave him, Krishna lived as a mother. There are two slokas are there. So I'm just wondering, how was he praying in the movie? Because he was impersonalist.
Looks like Nanda might have some insight.
Nanda, help us here.
Haribol, he actually heard it both. He heard it within the womb, because remember, it's right there in the Bhagavatam that Vyasadeva got so much in anxiety that his son, after 16 years, didn't come out. He went to Dwarka to get Krishna to come and preach to his son in the womb, and he did. Krishna came and preached to him and said, "I'll protect you." That's in the Bhagavatam. So he heard within the womb, and then he also heard after he came out when he left right away, and then Vyas sent his disciples with those slokas.
But Bhadra's question is that if he was an impersonalist, that may have happened at the end of 16 years, but who was he praying to for the first 15 years?
Whoever it was he was praying to heard him and answered his prayer.
There you go.
The impersonal feature of the Lord he was praying to. There's a lot of religions that I don't know who they're praying. All the Jewish religion, they're always praying. You ask to who? To God. They don't think that he's a person, but yet they're praying, Tim. Anyway,
even Gajendra was praying, but he didn't know who he was praying to. but he knew that there was a supreme person. He prayed, and then Lord Vishnu manifested in front of him.
Okay,
Thank you, Madananda, for making clear.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Nandaji. Okay, let's go on. Wait, everything got wrong. We got so excited. Premananda, why don't you read?
Okay, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-21. Therefore, without being agitated anymore, I shall deliver myself from the darkness of nations with the help of my friend, clear consciousness. Simply by keeping the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu in my mind, I shall be saved from entering into the wombs of many mothers for repeated birth and death. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It may be questioned herein how the child can be fully Krishna conscious within the womb of the mother without any paraphernalia with which to execute Krishna consciousness. It is not necessary to arrange for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu. The child wants to remain within the abdomen of his mother and at the same time wants to become free from the clutches of Maya. One does not need any material arrangement to cultivate Krishna consciousness. One can cultivate Krishna consciousness anywhere and everywhere, provided he can always think of Krishna. The Mahamantra Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare can be chanted even within the abdomen of one's mother. One can chant while sleeping, while working, while imprisoned, in the womb or while outside. This Krishna consciousness cannot be checked in any circumstance. The conclusion of the child's prayer is, let me remain in this condition, although it is very miserable. It is better not to fall a victim to Maya again by going outside. You are muted.
Thank you. So the child in the womb is actually thanking clear consciousness, his friend clear consciousness. That I really liked that statement. He's thanking his my friend clear consciousness. That was beautiful. You want to say something about that? How clear
true.
consciousness is the friend.
Because his consciousness was clear, he was able to remember. I don't know whether he was able to see the Lord, but at least he was able to remember the Lord. But when you come out, that consciousness gets covered, right, with so many things. And then we have to chant the Hare Krishna mantra to clear clean that consciousness, Chetodarpanam Arjuna. So that's what I could remember when I was reading this.
Okay, good, about clear consciousness.
Premananda, also speak a little bit on the point that Srila Prabhupada makes, that there's no need for paraphernalia to worship the Supreme
good.
Lord.
That's a good point, because sometimes we think that, we need the deities, we may need some paraphernalia, we may need flowers, we may need fruits to worship the Lord, but actually, no, we don't need anything. I mean, by the grace of Mahaprabhu, we have got the holy name, and you can chant it anywhere. There are people who even chant without having any beads. They chant it in their mind, they chant it with their fingers. I know I do a little bit of preaching to the ISKCON prison ministry, to the inmates in the prison. And sometimes they say, hey, I don't have a beads. I am not allowed to bring any beads because they find it dangerous. So I just chant it on my fingers, or I make use papers or anything just to keep account. So that's the thing. I mean, you really don't need any paraphernalia to chant the holy name. It's available everywhere, anywhere, and you don't need anything. You don't have to see purity, clean place, unclean place. It's just available.
You need your friend clear consciousness.
Yes.
Is what
as long as you have the desire to remember Krishna, Krishna will provide the means and the intelligence to remember him.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else have something to say about clear consciousness? To me, that was because I'm always thinking the mind and the senses. The mind is the serving. I got the senses down, but the mind is always the serving. Clear consciousness. Who can say anything else about that? Bajaji?
No, I have something else to say, but anyhow, if it's time, I can say something.
Okay. Well,
but for inquiry, I was not concentrating. I'm sorry.
Okay,
I have something else in my mind to ask.
Oh, so you have to keep your consciousness clear, and then you can tell us. Okay. Okay, Cheta.
But I have something to say.
Oh, you do? I thought you were clearing your consciousness.
No.
How could I? All right, his consciousness is clear. Go on, Gotcha.
Okay, if there is a time I can say. So the child is praying after the 7th month, right? That's what it says. Consciousness is clear. So am I speculating that sometime the child is living before the child is born, he or she leaves the body, sometimes in the womb, and sometimes as soon as come outside, leaves the body. Is that can be possible that the child was praying and it was his karma to finish and child didn't become a material
Why
organ, so
not?
get out?
Why not? It's definitely, why not? We've heard so many people.
Particular devotees, parents who are, who had done Garbhadan, Sanskar, whatever it is, and if it happened, then I guess I'm not speculating, but it can possibly the child meant to come to finish the karma and just leave right away without going into Maya.
Everything is possible. That would be far out.
Okay.
In the middle of it, you're praying in the womb, and then Krishna says, "Okay, you got it."
Just in a circumstance like that, though, it shows you how ironic it is, because it might be far out for the baby, but it wouldn't be for the parents.
That's true.
Which is another reason why it might not happen. All these scenarios are possible.
No, that's possible.
Yeah.
Let's stay with that one. That's definitely possible.
What?
That a baby could leave this world.
Of course it's possible. Of course it's possible. We've seen it so many times that babies are born, stillborn. And then I gotta say this is really determined Sankirtan. One girl, years and years ago, she was pregnant and the baby died in the womb, 5-6 months pregnant. And she knew that if she went through an operation, she wouldn't be able to go out on the Christmas marathon. And she waited until after the Christmas marathon and then got the operation. And this is like, I don't know if I would have encouraged that thing, but I mean, this is called transcendental. Chatta, did you want to say something?
Hari Bol. Good morning, dear devotees. I was amazed that this child can have this realization while in the womb and makes this vow that they're going to remember it and they're always going to worship Krishna. And then when they come out, they lose it. This is amazing.
It's a trauma. It's a trauma to get born.
Yeah, it's just astonishing. It's astonishing how we lose it. We come so far and then bang, it's gone.
You know, and I think of it as the natural condition of the living entity. Under dire circumstances, he's praying and conscious, but Maya is really strong. The circumstances of birth, when Prabhupada says birth, death, old age, and disease, these are the things that we have to transcend in this world. Birth is a traumatic experience.
I think
it's not so. We're learning now how horrible it is in the womb. We're seeing and waiting to see the next picture. I mean, birth is not easy. It's squeezed up and chewed out, and the life is, and you stop breathing. The body stops breathing. And this is traumatic. You forget everything. Yeah, it's like one's. Sukadeva Goswami is a rare case.
Yeah.
It's a rare case. I haven't seen another one like him. But all right, let's go on now. Ian, there, you get the picture, Ian. You get the prime picture here, right? Okay, Ian, unmute, please. Are you there, Ian? Uh-oh. I see you, but I don't hear you. You have to unmute. Unmute, Ian. Patsy, can you unmute Ian? I think he's frozen there. Okay, not possible now? Okay, Ian, we'll have to come back to you because I don't understand what's going on here technologically. Chatamayi, why don't you read this one, sweetie?
As you wish. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31, 22 through 24. Lord Kapila continued, The 10-month-old living entity has these desires even while in the womb. While he thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition propels him forward with his face turned downward so that he may be born. Pushed downward all of a sudden by the wind, the child comes out with great trouble, head downward, breathless, and deprived of memory due to severe agony. The child thus falls on the ground, smeared with stool and blood, and plays just like a worm germinated from the stool. He loses his superior knowledge and cries under the spell of Maya. Purport. The word Kricharena means with great difficulty. When the child comes out of the abdomen through the narrow passage, due to pressure there, the breathing system sometimes completely stops. And due to agony, the child loses his memory. Sometimes the trouble is so severe that the child comes out dead or almost dead. Oh my gosh. One can imagine what the pangs of birth are like. The child remains for 10 months in that horrible condition within the abdomen, and at the end of 10 months, he is forcibly pushed out. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord points out that a person who is serious about advancement in spiritual consciousness should always consider the 4 pangs of birth, death, disease, and old age. The materialist advances in many ways, but he is unable to stop these 4 principles of suffering inherent in material existence.
My goodness. So before I ask you to this, for your realization, I was just thinking how hearing this heavy duty stuff in the association of devotees, you know, I think we're all on the transcendental platform right now because we can understand it through spiritual vision. We really can. I mean, I can't be the only one feeling this. It's just that right now I'm like perfectly situated. Hearing the Bhagavatam and the association of devotees, it puts you on the transcendental platform.
Oh my God. We are so grateful to Lord Kapila Dev for discarding the veil, pulling it aside so we can actually see what's going on. Now, I have the experience of growing up in a family of 11 children. And my mother would, every year she'd be pregnant and she'd go to the hospital at the end of 9 months. And then 2 days later, she would come home with a baby in her arms. But she would never talk about the experience, what it was like, and she finally, after many years, disclosed that she was under general anesthesia for every single time she delivered the child. And she would come out of the anesthesia and there would be the child sitting in her lap, wrapped up and calm. But there was no acknowledgement of any of this horror and this agony, absolutely none whatsoever. And this is reality. This is the reality that is not being disclosed by the scientific community because they just don't know. To them, it's a mechanical process. But here, Lord Kapila Dev says there's a soul in there who's just as intelligent and aware as all of us.
Wow, very good.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Interesting,
Krishna.
interesting too, as how we've discussed previously, that scientific advancement veils and covers. It's an avaranatmika method to cover real knowledge, to cover the experience. So you keep on doing it over and over and over again. And then what happens is we go back into the womb and become again the cycle of samsara. This continues. These things are not helping. They're just covering it up. It's like some medicines or remedies that simply cover up a problem rather than getting to the root of it and actually healing the entire circumstance.
Avaranatmika is general anesthesia.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you know, it's not a pleasant experience giving birth. You know, Tisha, you want to speak something?
The Hare Krishna. Yeah, I want to, I have a question, but first I want to say in all the years that I was reading the Bhagavad Gita and stuff, I always knew Prabhupada saying the 4 pangs of material existence, birth, death, disease, and old age, but I never connected that birth was painful, like, death is painful, or, old age and disease come with pain, but I never connected birth being painful until I read this graphic details of it.
Very
And
good.
then in that one word parturition, what does it mean?
I think it means the
Just
birth process.
Pressure or what? I just never heard it before.
Manvantara, Madhurya Lila, parturition.
Look it up. If they don't know, Google will. Parturition. I think it means, the process of the air is going down.
It's the whole birthing process.
Oh, okay. All right. The entire
Keeping in the
so
womb and
right. So after 7 months, then the winds start to move. The baby can't stay the way it was before. And after 10 months, it becomes more exasperated as the whole system begins to move so that they can propel the body out. And that's parturition.
it's the process of giving birth. So from when the labor starts
Oh,
till the baby comes out,
okay.
and it's a complete childbirth. Another name is childbirth.
So here it says,
Shanta?
but while thus extols the Lord, the wind that helps parturition
Parturition.
propels him forth.
Yeah, so that means
Uh-huh.
the birthing process, coming through the canal and all that.
Wow.
That's confirmed by the Merriam-Webster. I just looked it up.
Okay, good.
All right, thank you.
Okay, Chatamayan, did you want to say
Well,
something?
just thinking that the essence is that it's involuntary. It's a force, we have no control of it, like the waves.
Right. Good. That is a very good point. Involuntary. He doesn't seem too happy about that. This little guy. Very graphic, Oh, don't cry, sweetie. You're so cute.
Great,
Oh,
Great photo, Prabhu, great photo.
Hare Krishna. Okay, let's see if Ian is connected now. Ian, my darling, are you with us? There you are.
Yeah, Hare Krishna. Yes, I didn't have any sound for a while, so I had to refresh the page.
Okay, good. Okay, now can you read this?
Yes,
Another
3:31:25. Yes. Okay. Wow. Okay. So after coming out of the abdomen, the child is given to the care of persons who are unable to understand what he wants, and thus is nursed by such persons, unable to refuse whatever is given to him if falls into undesirable circumstances. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Right. Within the abdomen of the mother, the nourishment of the child was being carried on by nature's own arrangement. The anesthesia within the abdomen was not at all pleasing, but as far as the child's feeding was concerned, it was being properly done by the laws of nature. But upon coming out of the abdomen, the child falls into a different atmosphere. He wants to eat one thing, but something else is given to him because no one knows his actual demand, and he cannot refuse the undesirables given to him. Sometimes the child cries for the mother's breast, but because the nurse thinks that it is due to pain within his stomach that is crying, she supplies him with some bitter medicine. The child does not want it, but he cannot refuse it. He is put in very awkward circumstances, and the suffering continues. Wow.
What do you think about this? This victim of material nature. That's what it looks like. But what can you say about this?
Yes, interesting. Oh, yes. You're in the womb, under very undesirable circumstances, and you get out. You're not able to say, I don't. Well, you cannot say, even if you say you don't want it. Well, whoever's looking after you will see, as I said, the nurse, maybe wants it to be breastfed by a mother, but the nurse thinks that something's wrong with the abdomen, so you get a bit of medicine. So I actually cannot say exactly how you're feeling or what you want. So it's in another serious, horrible situation where in that what you really want you can get. So what you get you really don't want. Yeah. You know.
That's true.
So
That's
mhm.
when we, and why is that? We're dependent on material nature.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, material nature.
iPhone.
Yeah. Yeah.
Totally dependent on material nature for our happiness and distress. I always,
Yeah.
you know, that is a very vulnerable condition when we are dependent about on like other people and our situation externally. We are so vulnerable because sometimes we're happy and sometimes we're distressed. It's a very weakened situation for the soul to be that to be dependent on externally for your happiness, your encouragement in life. Then no one's recognizing me. You know, people like feel distressed because they're dependent on the wrong person. You know, dependent on material nature, not dependent on Krishna and the philosophy that we've been given. It's very graphic and very wonderful. Okay, one moment, please. Sorry. Let's go on now with Tisha reading again. Oh boy, Tisha, you get a good one here.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31, 26 through 28. Laid down on a foul bed, infested with sweat and germs, the poor child is incapable of scratching his body to get relief from his itching sensation, to say nothing of sitting up, standing, or even moving. In his helpless condition, gnats, mosquitoes, bugs, and other germs bite the baby, whose skin is tender, just as smaller worms bite a big worm. The child, deprived of his wisdom, cries bitterly. In this way, the child passes through his childhood, suffering different kinds of distress, and attains boyhood. In boyhood, also, he suffers pain over desires to get things he can never achieve, and thus, due to ignorance, he becomes angry and sorry. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. From birth to the end of 5 years of age is called childhood. After 5 years, up to the end of the 15th year, is called Pauganda. At 16 years of age, youth begins. The distresses of childhood are already explained, but when the child attains boyhood, he is enrolled in a school which he does not like. He wants to play, but he is forced to go to school and study and take responsibility for passing examinations. Another kind of distress is that he wants to get some things with which to play, but circumstances may be such that he is not able to attain them, and he thus becomes aggrieved and feels pain. In one word, he is unhappy, even in his boyhood, just as he was unhappy in his childhood. What to speak of youth? Boys are apt to create so many artificial demands for playing, and when they do not attain satisfaction, they become furious with anger, and the result is suffering.
Seems like at every age, there is distress, every single age. What do you think about this, Tisha? Do you have an experience of this?
Yes, I hope I don't remember much of it, but it just makes me motivated to not have to do that again.
That would be good.
Yeah.
That's very good. Anything else?
No.
Okay. Betsy, do you want to add something to this?
No, I think Tisha's sentiments sum it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Don't
good.
want to do it again.
Yeah. And there's distress at every age. You know, beautiful little baby in the carriage. No, it's so distressful. It really is. Let's see if Manvantara can read. Are you all fixed up again, Manvantara? And then Ian.
Unfortunately, no. But what happens is I'm looking at the screen, but it cuts off towards the end. It stops at which we need for the, and there's nothing else after that.
Okay.
So I can't read the full thing because I'm not seeing. I fear if I go out and come back in, that's what I may have to do.
All right. So now you know.
Sorry.
You have to get this fixed so that we can hear your.
Manvantara, you can reduce this your sides of the screen. Control minus.
Can you try that, Mama Dora?
And there's a message for you in the chat. Please look.
Mama Dora, do you want to try?
Oh yeah, that actually worked, the control minus. And I responded to the message in chat.
Okay,
Leela.
thanks.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okay.
Before you read and start a new topic, Ian has something to say. Ian?
Okay.
Yes, in terms of, when we were going to school, there were subjects that we had to take, and we had no interest, but you had to take it as would have failed. Now I'm thinking of some of the science subjects I had no attraction for, but I had to take them. So, that's part of the distress. You go into school and doing some subjects that, even though, for example, in maths, I have no attraction for geometry, but they had to do it. So, when it came to geometry, I didn't do well. So it was a case that it didn't mean anything to me, even though I understand why it's used. But for me, in my life, I have no use for it. I had to take it. Yes. So I just remember,
We'll put that in the distress column. But on another hand, all of these, when your mind is young and you're learning these things, it's good to exercise the brain. If you want to think of it like that. Although there are some brains, they say, I don't need this, I don't want it. And I think we've all been through that. Why am I studying this nonsense? It's good for you, not for me. All right, thank you, Ian. That was very important, actually. We could have a whole discussion on that. Okay, Mama Tara, why don't you read this?
Okay, actually, geometry helps you to understand the psychological understanding of other people. So you may think you don't need it or use it, but you actually do. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 31, text 29 through 30. With the growth of the body, the living entity, in order to vanquish his soul, increases his false prestige and anger, and thereby creates enmity towards similar lusty people. By such ignorance, the living entity accepts the material body, which is made of 5 elements, as himself. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance in the darkest region. Purport. Lust circumstantially changes into anger. Both lust and anger stand on the platform of the motive passion. Lust is actually the product of the motive passion, and in the absence of satisfaction of lust, the same desire transforms into anger on the platform of ignorance. When ignorance covers the soul, it is the source of his degradation to the most abominable condition of hellish life. To raise oneself from hellish life to the highest position of spiritual understanding is to transform this lust into love of Krishna. Due to our lust, we want many things for our sense gratification, but the same lust can be transformed in a purified way so that we want everything for the satisfaction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anger also can be utilized toward a person who is atheistic or who is envious of the personality of Godhead. As we have fallen into this material existence because of our lust and anger, the same 2 qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness, and one can elevate himself again to his former pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is actual renunciation.
There's just a little bit more of the purport on the next slide. You want to just read that too?
Well, let me see if I can do this control minus. Okay, purport continued. The expansion of ignorance is explained in this verse. The first ignorance is to identify one's material body, which is made of 5 elements, as the self. And the second is to accept something as one's own due to bodily connection. In this way, ignorance expands. The living entity is eternal, but because of his accepting non-permanent things, misidentifying his interest, he is put into ignorance, and therefore he suffers material pangs.
Okay. What do you have to say about this?
It's the Bhagavad Gita. It's the instruction from the Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna about detachment and lust turning into ignorance and passion when unsatiated, when unsatisfied. And the famous verse when Krishna says, "It's lust only, Arjuna." So essentially, it does boil down to just that, and then the attachment of the body and the body's byproducts. And on some metaphysical level, I guess you can say, well, like last week when we were talking about the worms coming from the birth canal, just like how the baby comes from the birth canal and their brothers. You know, it's just like you have a child and the child passes poop and stool, but you're not attached to the poop and stool as the way you are attached to the child. So on a technical level, it's just like, well, why not? So it makes you think about what are your real attachments? You know, what is the purpose of those attachments? So that's what
I like when I like what you said about byproducts. When there was another verse stating the byproducts of the body, which family, society, and friends. And then if that's byproducts of the body, and we're not these bodies, that can give you a lot of detachment from what's going on out there. There was one other thing that I wanted to. We were discussing it this morning, and when you go in front of the spiritual master, when you go in front of Srila Prabhupada for the first time, or to accept him as your spiritual master or any spiritual master, when you walk out of that room, you're a new person. You're a completely new person. You're not in the bodily concept. You're transcendental to at that moment, at that time. Your identity with your byproducts and with yourself as this body is actually taken away. And that is a very great mercy, you know. So we've all experienced that. Now the thing is, sometimes just like the baby in the womb, he gets out of the womb and he forgets all that. But now, because we have the Vedic literatures and we have the process of Krishna consciousness, we can remember. But it's an amazing thing that Prabhupada came to give us all rebirth, all of us, every single one of us, and whoever's wanting this.
Before we go on, I want to go back. I had actually put these two slides on separate pages for a purpose. So that's all right.
Sorry.
No big deal. It's fine. So here it's talking about because the living entity identifies himself with the material body, he thinks this is me. With this misunderstanding, he accepts non-permanent things as his own and increases his ignorance. So this is the root of lust or desire. We say lust, we always think of sex or that attraction between men and women, but lust manifests itself actually in millions and billions of ways if we just say desire rather than lust. And desire is actually what propels the living entity from one condition to the next, because we have a desire for something, because the living entity has a desire for something, then it propels itself through because of that desire to attain that fulfillment of that desire. What's explained in the next verse, in this next purport, was the expansion of ignorance is explained here. The first ignorance is to identify as one's material body, which is made of five elements, as his self. And the second, in other words, the expansion of ignorance, is to accept something as one's own due to that bodily connection. I just thought that was really very nicely explained by Srila Prabhupada, how when we accept this machine as me, then naturally what's connected to it, mother, father, brother, sister, house, wife, children, money, whatever it might be, we think it's mine. And we see in the world today, especially, so much ignorance and so much tension, desire. What is a war for? War is, I want what you have. And because one leader or one group of politicians don't agree with another, millions and millions of people have to suffer due to that expansion of ignorance. So it actually explains everything in a very rational way. Lord Kapila Dev explaining how the root of one ignorance expands to another, and then to another, and then to another, and so on.
Wow, thank you. That's beautiful. Ian, did you want to say something? You have your hand raised.
Yes, hope you don't mind me taking over the comment section today.
Sure, don't worry. We're happy to hear
Okay,
from you.
so quickly, you might have heard about anger management. It's one of those topics nowadays. So I'm thinking that if you don't know what causes anger, or you're going to manage it, that's the first one. You know, people talk about anger management.
Good point.
Yes. And two, Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj has this in his Future War series, how to turn lust into love. I remember reading that.
Yes, it was very interesting. When I was looking for an image,
Yes.
I looked up lust and love, and there's a lot of, no, I looked up, yeah, like that. There was a lot of them. Then I said turning lust to love, and spiritual warrior. The
Came
image
up,
of
yes.
his book came up all over the place on the Google
that's
search.
neat.
That was interesting.
And he was a wonderful spiritual warrior.
Yeah.
Bhakti Tirtha.
And the third one, I think in the Bhagavad Gita it said that the three gates to hell are lust, anger, and greed. So yeah, so one goes, yes. So that's
Three
with
gates to
that.
hell. Three
Yeah,
gates to
lust,
hell.
yes, lust, anger, and greed.
It's interesting how Prabhupada says in the purport that these can be changed. And you could use these, not greed so much, but you could use, or maybe greed too, to get out of the material world as well, to serve Krishna, in the service of Krishna. You can use anger. Here we go. Who was reading? Mamatar, you want to read this? Are you there? Okay.
As we have fallen into this material existence because of our lust and anger, the same two qualities can be utilized for the purpose of advancing in Krishna consciousness, and one can elevate himself again to his former pure spiritual position. Srila Rupa Goswami has therefore recommended that because in material existence we have so many objects of sense gratification, which we need for the maintenance of the body, we should use all of them without attachment for the purpose of satisfying the senses of Krishna. That is actual renunciation.
Isn't that beautiful? Thank you. That's beautiful. All right, let's go on. And Kate, would you like to read this? We're almost at the end here. Kate?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31-31. For the sake of the body, which is a source of constant trouble to him, and which follows him because he is bound by ties of ignorance and fruitive activities, he performs various actions which cause him to be subjected to repeated birth and death. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that one has to work to satisfy Yajna or Vishnu. For any work done without the purpose of satisfying the Supreme Personality of Godhead is a cause of bondage. In the conditioned state of a living entity, accepting this body as himself forgets his eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and acts on the interest of his body. He takes the body as himself, his bodily expansions as kinsmen, and the land from which his body is born as worshipable. In this way, he performs all sorts of misconceived activities which lead to his perpetual bondage in repetition of birth and death in various species. In modern civilization, the so-called national and government leaders mislead more and more under the bodily conception of life, with the result that all the leaders with their followers are gliding down to hellish conditions birth after birth. But there are many leaders to lead the ignorant public, and because every one of them is bewildered by the bodily conception of life, there is no peace and prosperity in human society.
Okay. So this has a few very wonderful points. Any work not done for the satisfaction of Krishna is binding. It binds us to the material world. What's your realization of these things? Do you need to see the page again?
Yeah, actually, it remind what we read in the last purport, where we can actually take these things, all of these material items and things that we use to maintain our body, and if we can just use them in the service of Krishna, then they won't be binding.
Good. And good. The proper use. Prabhupada said that is pure renunciation. That is the real. That is the renunciation.
I didn't understand that picture. I don't. Is that
Me
what?
neither.
Was
You want to
that,
explain that?
Yeah.
What happened was that I looked up, I Am My Body. This is a book that somebody wrote called I Am My Body, and she did it under the guise of theology. I Am My Body, a theology of embodiment, paperback. It's actually a whole, and in the reviews, some people really didn't like it. They said the person says that it's a theology, but it's just about how you think of your body, and whatever your body wants, you have to work for it. So here, what the verse and purport are talking about is people being led and thinking that I am my body. This is actually a philosophy. I am my body. So it was the best image that I could find, sold on Amazon as a book under the guise of theology, which means the science of the self and God.
What not to buy on Amazon. That's number one first.
There you go.
What not to buy on Amazon. Yeah, I was confused. Thanks for asking that, Kate. I also was confused. What I am my body. This is like complete opposite from reality. Okay. Anything else? All right. Why don't Sham? Thank you, dear. Thank you, Kate. Sham Govinda, would you like to finish up? This is the last slide, and then we have another thing that my husband's going to present.
Srimad Bhagavatam 3:31, text 32 to 33. If therefore the living entity again associates with the path of unrighteousness, influenced by essentially minded people engaged in the pursuit of sexual enjoyment and the gratification of the palate, he again goes to hell as before. He becomes devoid of truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, gravity, spiritual intelligence, shyness, austerity, fame, forgiveness, control of the mind, control of the senses, fortune, and all such opportunities. Purport. Generally, people are concerned with the satisfaction of the tongue and the satisfaction of the genitals. That is material life. Material life means eat, drink, be merry, and enjoy, with no concern for understanding one's spiritual identity and the process of spiritual advancement. Since materialistic people are concerned with the tongue, belly, and genitals, if anyone wants to advance in spiritual life, he must be very careful about associating with such people. To associate with such materialistic men is to commit purposeful suicide in the human form of life. It is said, therefore, that an intelligent man should give up such undesirable association and should always mix with saintly persons. When he is in association with saintly persons, all his doubts about the spiritual expansion of life are eradicated, and he makes tangible progress on the path of spiritual understanding.
Okay, so this is, now we're going to have a different way to look at goes to hell as before. Now we all know what that actually means, goes to hell as before. That's terrifying. You even told me that this is petrifying for you, Sham Govinda. Last week you used those words, that it was petrifying, with the understanding of hell goes to hell as before. Anyway, so I just thought I'd fit that in. What's your realization of this, Sham?
My realization is that we can just utilize everything in Krishna's service, but this is kind of more subtle. In the association of devotees, we can establish loving relationships with loving exchanges and be attached to one another, and therefore help each other to elevate our consciousness. And so similarly, we can use feelings like, rejecting other leaders, materialistic leaders. So we can use our intelligence and those negative feelings to also push ourselves up in Krishna consciousness. So by making those differentiations.
Good.
So that's.
making those differentiations. That's very important, to discriminate, and sometimes we're afraid to discriminate because it's not social. What's that thing called? Social, when it's politically correct, right? But a devotee has, we have to make those distinctions. Very good, very important point. Thank you.
I guess it's empowering. Yeah.
What was that?
It's empowering. That's the empowerment we have. I mean, we're hearing how we're not empowered, right? We're hearing how we can't even understand what's been said to us as a baby. And so similarly, that kind of extends right through our life. There's so much we don't understand, but it's empowering that we have the one choice, which is Krishna. The Maya is not a choice. That's a consequence of not choosing Krishna. But yeah, it's a tool to be empowered.
Good. That's your choice of discrimination, to choose Krishna. You choose Krishna. If we always choose Krishna, and we stay in the association of devotees and hear these transcendental topics together, we will be safe. This is safe. We will be safe. Maya will not touch us. We have to hear and chant and associate with devotees. This is called association with devotees. This is, I was thinking about today's the yard sale. And then I told my husband, oh, I can't go to the yard sale because we're going to do the Zoom. And I feel like Sati, not going to the yard sale with a latch off. He said, really, Sati, all the great demigods and everyone of the universe was going to associate in this great party. And I was thinking, I can't go to the yard sale. But no, I would much rather be here with you, my darlings, 100,000,000% than any yard sale or even any sacrifice, because this is the real sacrifice of the age, right? This is what we're doing is meaningful. So much for everyone else's old clothes and stuff. Unmeaningful. Okay, Patty, why don't you, was that it, Shangavinda? That was pretty much it. Okay, let's hear, we're now gonna, Patty, you wanna explain what we're about to do now?
I put it in the course materials in the forum section. This is a Srila Prabhupada explaining a song by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, which was pretty much based on these teachings by Lord Kapila Dev. I'm going to play just a little bit of it to make sure everybody can hear it.
This is a song.
Can you hear that?
Yes.
Sung by Bhaktivinoda Thakur as the surrendering process. We have heard so much about surrender. So here are some of the songs how one can make surrender. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur says, Bhuliya tomare sangsare asya. My dear Lord, I have come to this material world by forgetting Lord's. And since I have come here, I have suffered so many troubles since a long, long time through different species of life. So therefore, I have come to surrender unto you and submit unto you the story of my sufferings. First thing is that I had to live within the womb of my mother. Janani Jathare Chilam Japan, when I was there, compact, packed up in a airtight bag, hands and legs, I was staying within the womb of my mother. At that time, I had a glimpse of you. After that time, I could not see you. At that time, I could see you, a glimpse. At that time, I thought, Takhono bhavino janamo paiya. I thought that this time when I get out of this womb, I shall surely engage 100% in the service of the Lord, worshipping the Lord. No more. This repetition of birth and death is so troublesome. Now, I shall engage, this birth I shall engage myself simply on devotional service to get out of this Maya. But unfortunately, exactly after my birth, janamo hoilo pori Maya jale, na hoilo gyano love. As soon as I got out of the womb, immediately Maya, the illusory energy, captured me, and I forgot that I was in such precarious condition, and I was crying and praying to the Lord that this time I shall get out and engage myself in devotional service. But all these senses were lost as soon as I took my bath. Then the next stage is Adarere Chele Sajonero Kole. Then I become a very pet child, and everyone is taking me on the lap, and I thought life is very nice. Everyone loves me. Then I thought this material life is very good. Adarere Chele Sajonero Kole. Hashiya Katano call, because there is no trouble. As soon as I am a little difficulty, everyone comes forward to give me relief. So I thought my life will go on like this. So I simply wasted my time, simply was smiling, and that smiling became attractive to my relatives, and they patted me. I thought this is the life. Janaka Janani Snehite Bhuliya Sangsar Lage. At that time, a great deal of affection of parents, so I thought a material life is very nice. Krome dini dini balako hoiya khelunu balako saho. Then gradually I grew up and I began to play with my childhood friends, and it was very nice life. And after some days, when I was little intelligent, then I was put into school, so I began to study very seriously. And then after that, Vidyaro Gaurave Bhrami Deshe Deshe Dhanu Uparjana Kari. Then being puffed up, Bhaktivinoda Thakur was magistrate, so he was transferred from one place to another. He is stating his life that Vidyaro Gaurave, because I was little educated, so I was posted and I was earning decently. So I was thinking, it is very nice. Vidyaro Gaurave Bhrami Deshe Deshe Dhanu Uparjana Kari. Sajana Palana Kari Akmane. And only duty was how to maintain, how to raise family members, how to keep them happy. That became my only aims and object of life. Badhakke ekhon Bhagati Vinod. Now Bhaktivinoda Thakur, in his old age, Kadiya Katarati. Now I am seeing that I will have to give up all these arrangements. I will have to go away and take another body. Therefore I do not know what kind of body I am going to get. Therefore I am crying. I am very much aggrieved. Badhakke ekhon Bhagati Vinod Kadiya Katarati. I am very much aggrieved. Na bhojiya tore dino britha gala ekhon. So, without worshipping you, without serving you, I have simply wasted my time in this way. I do not know what to do, therefore I surrender. Hare Krishna, Hare
Wow. Hare Krishna. Jai Srila Prabhupada. Okay, well, that was started with Tisha saying the word surrender. And everyone seems to have repeated, and now it's all confirmed by Srila Prabhupada and Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So we are on the right track. Anyone else have something to say about this? Anything we discussed today?
May I just comment that this immediate capture by Maya that Srila Prabhupada was talking about, it must feel really good because it caused us to forget that Mother Kunti type suffering that we were experiencing and are experiencing. But as soon as we get so-called a break or this warm embrace by Maya, then we just forget all the vows that we pledged to surrender.
Right. You know, that's
so it's a choice. It comes back to doing a choice. If you surrender, that's a choice. So the opposite of surrender is forced, you know. But if you have the choice to surrender, then, you know, Krishna is all merciful. Why would he not accept that? So the fact that you're falling into Maya again is because that embrace feels really good.
Well, not all the time. Actually, Krishna uses that embrace. It gets real, a tight embrace where you almost die. You know, this material energy is very torturous, as we've been reading here. So that's also the embrace. But we don't sometimes like that so much, that kind of embrace of the Lord, that it's so hard for us here, and all these terrible things are happening. And why is it happening to me, Krishna? This is why it's happening. That's the real embrace of the Lord, when things are not going well. And then we take shelter of him. We were talking about this morning. After all we've been through, then the soul comes back, and the union between Krishna and the living entity, when he finally becomes relieved of this material world and established in his eternal constitutional position, that meeting of Krishna and the pure soul is just, you know, magnificent. It's just magnificent. But if we didn't suffer all the time going through it, it wouldn't be that glorious, really. Anyway, Ian, did you have something to say?
Yes, I was. Yes, like I said last week, if you notice the content of the prayers, you know, it's not very often you see personalities able to say those kinds of prayers to the Lord. You know, and also there's a part that said that actually saw the Lord briefly. So in other words, now we reached to a stage where we're conscious of where we were before, what we have done, and the suffering. But yet, you know, after we came out, there we go again into, you know, the repeated birth and death. So it's interesting that I think we should have those prayers, you know, some of our bedhead or our desk to remind ourselves, you know, been through this so many millions of times. Yeah.
Very
So,
good.
interesting. Yeah. Hare Krishna.
Very interesting. Very interesting and very important, you know. Cheta? Thank you, Ian.
Oh, Haribol, thank you, Ian. That is a great recommendation that we read these prayers regularly so we stay sober. I just wanted to thank Dhruva for putting up that book from the Amazon search. I mean, that's such a rare find, but there it is, and that's Kali Yuga at its finest. I am my body. Thank you.
And they come up with she wrote a whole book, so it must be a lot of arguments, a lot of intelligent presentations and things like that, but it's all in the wrong direction.
Haribol. Anyway,
Okay.
thank you.
Anyone else has something to add?
Let me just one last comment, and I apologize for just barging in because I can't find my hand.
Don't worry about the technology. Go on.
Speaking of Sadhu Sangha and association, is Faye doing well? I missed her on these forums.
I'm surprised she's not here today. I did notice that she hasn't gone on in several days, but she went on about 8 hours ago, 10 hours a day ago now. I did check this morning to see. I'll have to write her and see.
Why did you write her too, Manvantara?
I don't have anything for her. I was just missing her presentations and her offerings here on the forum, and some of her writings. I haven't seen her writings in some time, so I wasn't sure if she was doing well.
Okay, thank you. Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Patsy.
Yes, very nice.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Vanchakapatubhyascha, Kripasindhubheva-cha, Happy Nrsimha Chaturdasi to everyone.
Okay. Nishingadem ki jai. Yes, Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare
Yeah.
Krishna.